Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, April 3rd of 2017, the City Council meeting. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we'll be led in prayer by Pastor John Miles of Prairie Lakes Hospice Pastoral Care.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening. I have the privilege of working with hospice patients, and in that capacity, I come face to face with the reality of death almost on a daily basis. And one of the things this does is to make me very aware of what a wonderful gift life is, how precious and fragile it is, and how fleeting it is. So with this in mind, I invite you to pray with me this evening. Gracious and loving God, you are the giver of life and the source of all that is good. We offer you our praise with grateful hearts that we are able to be here in this place at this time. We know this is not an accident, but an invitation and an opportunity. We share with you the art of creativity, the exercise of grace, the generative power of making the world a better place. And with your Son, Jesus, we share in the humble act of selfless service. We ask you to bless with your wisdom and guidance these members of the Watertown City Council. Give them discernment in making difficult decisions, magnanimity and respect for the opinions of others, a sense of humor to ease the burden of their responsibilities, and a clear conscience from living lives of integrity and acting for the good of the people they serve. Bless them for their generosity in sharing their time and talents on behalf of our community. Bless all who reside here and those who have gone before us and have helped make Watertown the community that it is today. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. All right. Shelley, will you do roll call for us?
I will. Albertson?
Here.
Bueller?
Here.
Danforth?
Here.
Manty?
Here.
Riefenberger?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Solem?
Here.
Thorson?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Vilhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure if you were going to have any teeth chatting over there. Getting a little chilly? Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Okay, at this time I will go to number one, approval of the consent agenda. I need a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Bruce. Second by Beth. Any questions, changes? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number two, approval of the agenda, but I do need to add under 2A to put an ad out for the authorization to advertise for bids for the storm shelter. I would like to add that under 2A. So I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Glenn, second by John. Any questions, changes that you need? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we'll start right out. Number 2A. Authorization to advertise for bids for the storm shelter. So Shane and Don, if you guys want to handle that for us, that'd be great.
Should we pull that up, Shane? Oh, it's still sitting right there, okay. Okay, thank you, Mayor. We're here tonight to ask for... And just briefly, I wanted to kind of go through the storm shelter project in general. If you want to click the next slide. Obviously, this storm shelter is going to be located at 17th Street and 17th Avenue Southeast. It's directly to the east of the softball complex out at the new complex area. And the folks that Obviously, you're going to be using it to be the soccer players, families, possibly softball, baseball players, families, as well as Mobile Estates, which has probably 300 plus people that would be out there. This is kind of a picture of the design that RSA Architects put forward for us. Varnish block would be on the outside. I think the inside would be pretty similar to that as well. Next slide is kind of just the overall layout of the storm shelter. Essentially, we did not have a partition in the middle. It says future there, but we're going to go ahead and put that in. I did talk to Jim Poppin, who's the state mitigation grant director, and he did give us authority to move forward with that right away. So when we go to bid, we'll go ahead and put that in there. There will be a door there. This will be kind of a universal building. We can go ahead and use it for the kids that are going to be using it for boys and girls. So we could have one side boys and girls. We'd lock that door. And then obviously, when time comes for a storm or a tornado type watch or a thunderstorm watch, when we use it, we'd lock that, open that door back up again. The door would always be open when the soccer association is not using it, I should say. And then ultimately, the doors are locked and they'd be opened up with a card that we'd have either PD or FD, or it's yet to be determined as who's going to be opening up during those watches. It's a 30 by 40 building. As you can see here, this is an overview of where the concession stand bathroom sits at the soccer field on that berm. That red block there, box there, is a 30 by 40. That would be next to the sidewalk, so we wouldn't have to put any more sidewalk up that ADA accessible for the sidewalk there. So as you can see, they would be sitting situated right there. Next slide is just basically kind of major overview of the where the softball complex is at and where the parking lot would be for those folks that would be coming for the storm shelter. And basically the size, like I said, is a 30 by 40. 150 to 200 is kind of the number that they say we can use for it. And overall cost for the project that we got was $225,000, not to exceed. And the city's portion is $56,000. Any questions?
Is there intention of putting any type of signage to let folks know where that is? Like
Matter of fact,
at the softball complex or on the road, maybe directional signage?
that would be something probably this team, or maybe Shane could allude to that.
What I would anticipate is that we've talked about various kiosk and informational pieces over at the softball complex. I would anticipate that a sign would either be incorporated into a kiosk or in that vicinity that would direct them over to the Anza complex. Plus, we would probably have a written itinerary for an announcer at the ball field so that if and when threatening weather is coming into the area, that the announcement of where to go and where you can be safe would be.
I would suggest that we look seriously at put something on the road, some sort of directional sign that says storm shelter with an arrow and.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, and I would think we would do flyers to the residents of the mobile home park so that they could know that that's available to them, so that that's the closest place in the area.
How durable is that other building out there? I mean, could you actually put people in it, or would, I've been out there many times and never paid any attention.
Not rated
It's
by
certainly
FEMA.
safer than being out in the open, but it's not rated for storms. This building that we're going to put up is actually a special concrete block, and then all of the cores of the block get completely filled with mortar, so it's basically a cement enclosure. It's and even the roof, it's going to have a tornado-rated roof so that it doesn't collapse in and hurt anybody either. So it's a pretty intensely built building.
There's a plan, then the building itself will have some signage that says,
That's required by FEMA. Yes, we have to do that.
Yep, and we're going to use as much symbolism as we do so that if we get bilingual folks out there that they can understand what the purpose of the building is without being able to read or speak English.
Shane, I don't recall what the plan is. I think you presented this before, but if it's on a weekend, for example, who opens the building?
Okay, so that's part of the operational thing that we've been talking about. We've actually talked about a lot of different options. Key fob seems to be the predominant preferred method. So what we would do is if if a warning is going to be distributed, the PD or the fire department will have somebody that's designated to go unlock that during those watch periods, and then when the watch is over or expired, they would go back and inspect the facility, make sure there's nobody in it, and then relock it.
Jim Sutton, the county emergency management director, stated that 7 to 8 times a year has kind of been the tornado, thunderstorm watch type periods. So not a lot of times, essentially.
Any other questions for these guys?
The existing ones we have now down, like the extension building and stuff, what happens with that when a storm comes? I mean, who opens that?
Good question, Randy. Actually, that's the county emergency management director and his staff. They go out and actually, and volunteers, I should say, as well, weather spotters, whoever it might be that he designates to do that, yes.
So it's always worked in the past, so.
Didn't we talk at one time about having some sort of a radio lock, that you could unlock with a signal of some sort? I know we did talk about that with some of those buildings. I don't know if that's an option.
We did talk about it, and I think that somebody's actually done some preliminary cost estimates, and it's not within our anticipated budget, so we wouldn't do that initially. That might be something we could add later on.
That might be something you could add with all of them later on at one time, with just one signal, so.
Primarily what those mostly operate off of is, of course, either needs to be telephone driven, where you'd have a $40-some fee per site to have Wi-Fi, or you'd have to have it hardwired to cable or something else, and that's where the cost prohibitiveness is. It's not in actually trying to implement it, but you'd have so if you were only going to use it 4 months out of the year and you had to pay a $45 phone fee to keep the Wi-Fi going, it's not very efficient. So that's a work in progress, but we're planning on a key fob to start with.
Down on the design, did you say that you're going to be using electronic key fob versus a key?
The key fob, yes.
Okay, and why are we doing that versus for one door?
That way, anybody that's on staff at PD or fire department, they all have the same.
Oh, they all have
key fob, so it doesn't matter who's on duty. They all would have the ability to open it.
And what's nice about that fob is that Spencer has the ability to program that. So the police department really only needs to carry one. It's the same key that works for this facility as well as the police department, kind of like the rec center is right now, the wellness center. So it does work quite well.
The other question I have is on the bathrooms. Is that are they unisex bathrooms, or are they male and female?
Unisex.
Okay.
They are unisex right now, but I think the intent, if you want to go back on that slide, a couple back.
Well, I'm talking about, I understand the boys and girls
that one right
thing,
there.
because hopefully
Right.
they'll close the doors, but during a storm use, they're unisex.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
We're even going to have a inline water heater, so that's a requirement that we have hot water available in these, and we talked about doing an inline heater rather than invest in, gas and all the other stuff for a traditional water heater. So we've pretty much covered all the bases that we think we would need for this.
What's the plan then in the winter? Is that gonna be heated, or is that gonna be
No, it'll-
drained down then in the winter?
Yep, it'll be winterized in the off season.
What's the average amount of time a person spends in a storm shelter that you would need hot water?
That is a
I know where you're going.
decision, and we don't have a way to.
And we wonder
go
why.
around it.
Okay. I think I have a motion, a second on the floor, do I not? No? Well, let's get a motion.
Now I'll make a motion.
I got a motion by Randy, second by Mike. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Number 3, ordinance number 1713, removing chapter 7.13 of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown to dissolve the Civic and Rec Board and place the Prairie Lakes Wellness Center under the Park and Recreation Board. This is a second reading. I will be looking for a motion and a second for further discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Bruce, second by Dan. Any questions on this? We've gone through this a number of times while we're doing it. Do you want to give a short understanding of it then, Justin?
Can certainly do that, Mayor. So as you recall, with the advent of the Prairie Lakes Recreation Center, or Prairie Lakes Wellness Center, excuse me, that the use of the Watertown Recreation Center as a joint use facility between the city and the school district is no longer present, namely the use as a joint use recreation center. So therefore, it no longer constituted a, quote, cooperative recreation system, which by state law would allow it to have a separate civic and recreation board. As a result, now, with it being under a city building, all of our recreation facilities that were once at the Recreation Center being under the Prairie Lakes Wellness Center, there's no need for a joint use structure. And so, by state law, per SDCL Chapter 9-38, the authority to manage the Prairie Lakes Wellness Center would need to be vested in the Parks and Recreation Board.
Thanks, Justin. Any questions on that? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Justin. Number 4, first reading of ordinance number 1712, amending section 21.2303 and chapter 21.90 of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown regarding RG Residential Garage District. Shane, you want to give us an idea of what's going on there? You remember we had that in front and there was a couple of changes.
Yep, so we brought this back as a first reading because we did make substantial changes to the previous version of it.
Kenny, did you want to get up on this one, this garage district one? No? You can. Come on up, buddy. Yeah.
So, brief explanation, this was brought to city staff through the planning commission meeting as desire to enhance the buildings or the ability to build buildings in the RG district that would accommodate recreational sized vehicles, campers, large boats, like pontoons and different things. And so it was recognized that the current side wall height of 10 feet was not adequate to accommodate those vehicles. So the idea was to increase the sidewall height to 16 feet. So we discussed at length a lot of other variations that we would do to the RG district with regard to those structures. So it came out that we would do an articulation on a sidewall that exceeded 20 feet so that we would have some aesthetic value to those structures and not just have a big box sitting out there. We did increase the maximum height of the building to 30 feet to reflect the added sidewall height. And then we also recently modified the side yard setback to include a half a foot additional setback for every additional foot above 12 feet for that. So, those are a summation of the changes. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
And it is just first reading. This will come in front of you again at the next meeting. But if you do have questions, now's the time. I think that the reason it's first reading again is because we had questions last time.
We made recommendations for changes, so this is now back. And then we'll have a public hearing at the next meeting.
Shane, how do we arrive at a half a foot? How?
That is consistent with what we've done in other parts of the code, right, Ken? Well, there was a...
Yes, correct. Yep. We have a relationship with overall height just in our general tables. From whenever we have like 3 to 6 apartments through 8 or more, there's a prorated setback, and we tried to follow that just same basic formula.
That
Okay.
doesn't apply residential though then, right? Because 2-story house or something doesn't have any change in setbacks because of that.
No. This is only to the commercial properties and the residential garage district.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's move on to number 5. First reading of ordinance number 1707, repealing section 19.0417, regulating parking in the Uptown Business District within and for the city of Watertown. Justin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a revision meant to reflect a recommendation by the Urban Renewal Board. As referenced when this came up here at the last work session, this has been a 2-year ongoing situation regarding this particular provision, and really what has happened since then is all measures or all indications of the existence of this ordinance have been taken care of. The signage, a number of folks didn't even think that this was enforceable anymore, but in fact there still is this language in ordinance, and so the Urban Renewal Board recommended, for the rationales given in the memo, that this ordinance should be repealed by the City Council, given its enforceability concerns, given the prudence of the city injecting itself into what would otherwise be a matter that would be handled as neighbors in the uptown area.
Perfect. And again, this is first reading, and this will come in front of you at the next council meeting. If you have any quick questions, probably not. We should be okay. So I'm going to slide on. Number 6. There's a basketball game going on tonight. So number 6, first reading of ordinance number 1714, amending section 1.0501 of the revised ordinance of the City of Watertown to depict the correct statutory authority for the airport board. Again, Justin, if you want to take that one on.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be happy to. This is simple housekeeping measure. When this ordinance was adopted, there were 2 provisions in state statute that allowed for municipalities to adopt municipal airport boards. It just so happened that the state legislature found that these 2 provisions were redundant and decided to get rid of the one provision that we utilized in our ordinances as authority for the municipal airport board to exist. So what this ordinance does is simply strikes that provision, replaces it with the authority, the organic authority that continues on in statute, and no ultimate power from the state has changed in terms of what the airport board can and cannot do, so it's pure housekeeping.
Right, and the question was, the board is exactly the way it was. It has all the authority that it had in the past. Nothing basically changes on this.
That's correct, no change in authority.
Okay. Number 7, first reading of ordinance number 1715, amending section 19.07 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown to regulate personal conveyances, including bicycles. And again, Justin, if you want to take this.
Certainly, Mayor. You will recall that this discussion was had initially regarding a specific provision in Chapter 1907, that being Section 190704. There was an intention to clarify so that there was no mistaking that the prohibition on riding bicycles in the downtown area had been removed. That, as you will recall at the last work session, there was discussion about potentially expanding the scope of this entire chapter that had once regulated bicycles and in a few sections a few other conveyances to cover more personal conveyances than simply bicycles. And so what has transpired since then is a substantial rewrite of Chapter 1907 to include all manner of personal conveyances that would be regulated under this chapter, although the framework for regulation is predominantly the same. So while there are now scooters, carts, electric wheelchairs, rollerblades, electric personal assistive devices, which is just a fancy term for Segway-like devices that are now regulated under this chapter, the other provisions, the old provisions about obeying traffic laws, being ridden carefully, not ridden more than 2 abreast, lighting required, hitching rides, those all remain. The one additional restriction here, however, is, and this was alluded to again at the work session, that Segway-like devices, your personal electric personal assistive devices, there was a thought that those should be prohibited from sidewalks. And so they are prohibited in this language except for law enforcement use. So there's a lot there. If you have any questions, I'm happy to walk through individual provisions.
Just a couple things, Justin. When you say in here it's a non-self-propelled, non-motorized, isn't that contradictory?
No. So self-propelled means not propelled by human. Like the machine itself is propelling itself. So
not self.
That's right.
Not self-self.
All right.
Yep.
I gotta make a comment, Mayor. I know there's a game, but I have to laugh at this. Justin and I have been working a lot back and forth on emails here, and last week he calls me, and I was busy. I couldn't take a phone call from him, so my wife took a message, and I get done, and she says, "You need to call Justin Getz." And I said, "Okay, I'll call him." She said, wow. She said, "He's really nice and calm for an engineer, or for an attorney." So that's a good compliment.
Yes.
I don't know what you said to her, but she likes you.
I'm just a roiling tempest into this visit.
Just-
You know,
I know you make me calm.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Justin. Let's move on to number 8. First reading of ordinance number 1717, amending chapter 3.01 to clarify the regulation of service animals, assistant animals, police dogs, and kennels. And if you'll take that for us also, Justin.
Be happy to, Mayor. Really, this is work that was driven in large part by Councilwoman Mante's work, the work of the Animal Control Board, Mr. Miller, who I see is in the audience here tonight. If you would like to, Mr. Miller, step up to the plate and be part of this conversation, you're more than welcome to. And Councilwoman Mante, feel free to cut me off at any time.
Why don't you take the mic over to him? Just stay there, Danny. We'll bring you the mic.
While that mic is getting over to Mr. Miller, really there were a few items that were needing to be touched on in these provisions. The big part was complying with federal law, making sure that our service animal language, our assistance animal language, captured what federal law currently reads as. So you'll see changes in here to definitions that do that relate to certain provisions like Section 30103, how assistance animals are specially treated by the city on city property. And there's also a provision in here that clearly exempts police dogs from all of Chapter 301, given their unique status. Another provision that is covered in here relates to, let me see if I can find that here, relates to kennels and the treatment of kennels. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah. That's correct. Yep. So that's something for the council to consider as well. Let me see if I can pull this up here. The provisions that were modified regarding kennels are Section 30105, and then provisions relating to service animals, like now the service animal definition has expanded to cover miniature horses per federal law. That's changed in Section 30109.
Any questions for Justin or for Dan? Danny, do you want to comment about it at all? Or are you good to go? You're okay?
It went from
Perfect.
this to that.
Justin, you have any more you want to mention on that, or are we good to go? As it is first reading, we'll have discussion on it next week also.
I just want to pitch in and give my kudos to Justin for helping us take our scribbled ideas on the back of my notepad and turn it into ordinance. So I know Dan and Mark and Charisma and Justin and I all worked really hard to keep cleaning up these ordinances, which have needed to be done for the last 10 years, I think. So anyway, thanks to all of you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to number 9. Consideration of a bridge inspection program resolution for use with the South Dakota Department of Transportation retainer contracts resolution number 17-09. This time I'll entertain a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mike, second by Glenn, and I will let you, Shane, take this.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. It is once again that time of year where we do our annual resolution that memorializes our commitment to the inspection of our bridge bridges within the community. Federal regulations require inspection of all bridges and reinspection at intervals not to exceed 2 years. So we've split our bridge system into 2 segments, and annually we allot within the state's inspection program who we're going to have do our inspections. This year we're choosing Infrastructure Design Group, who is a firm that recently opened an office in the community, and we have the same person that will be doing the inspections this year as was previously performed by Clark Engineering. So we found that report to be exceptional and intend to reutilize that person's talents through this resolution. So with that, I guess the cost to the city of Watertown is a 20% share of the cost of the inspections. The state covers the other 80%.
And I would agree with you when you said an exceptional report. When Vanessa did that, it was very easy to follow, and it was very professionally done. Any questions for Shane on this?
Shane, this is this the program whereby if we agree to pay more or bid to pay more than the 20%?
No, this is a completely separate thing. This is a mandatory, bridge inspections are mandatory. The state receives federal funding to assist communities with that inspection cost, and we have to agree by resolution to pay 20% to participate in that program. Otherwise, 100% of the costs of the inspections would fall on the shoulders of the city. So we choose to participate annually in that program so that we get the 80% cost share from the state.
And you may want to just touch on what his question was. I think that.
Okay, so the other.
Just so
the other
clear what he was saying.
So the other funding is, it's called BIG grant, and that's for bridge infrastructure. And that is a totally separate program within the state DOT. And we do currently have 2 big grant applications in. And just an update on that real briefly is that we expect to hear whether or not we're funded from that by the end of April. So I hope to have a report sometime in May.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that for my sake.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 10, consideration of a resolution vesting authority of the city council and the building official and chief of police to jointly approve public dances or festivals on city property and right-of-way, and to approve contract language for such purposes. Resolution number 17-10. I'll look for a motion as second for discussion purposes. Motion by Beth, second by Randy. So go ahead, you guys, if you want to light this up. Whoever. Justin, you want to start it?
Justin's a good place to start.
I'll talk in enough circles so that we can get our story straight. No, the council dealt with this issue here, about a month and a half ago, where the discussion started about how to broach this topic of street dances, how to handle it, what kind of potential limits might be placed, the full gamut of considerations there. Well, in the meantime, it was discovered that we have had street dances in the past, but we hadn't the formal procedure or the formal protections that maybe would be most ideal to have, given the potential liabilities that are associated with street dances, the concerns there, making sure that, the folks that are running these street dances are on the up and up and, are able to manage risk well. So in keeping with that motivation, we did some research, talked to our insurer, and came up with some ideas on what might be a superior procedure. And given the amount of street dances that in the past have been held in the city and are likely to be held in the future, the thought was that there would be maybe a better place to have an administrative procedure for approving these street dances, street festivals, wherever public grounds in the city were sought to be employed. And so this resolution was the product of that thought. If you read through the whereas clauses, it thoroughly cites state law piece by piece as to where this authority comes from, how it would be used. And then in regards to the protection component, we do have contract language, a contract template that could and would be used for any street dance applicant. And within that contract language, you'll see reference to, statements, averments by the applicants that they are licensed, that they will comport to their liquor license, that they have certain entertainment obtained, who that entertainment is, their contact information, and other representations, including particularly indemnification language, which is helpful, very helpful from a risk perspective. So anyways, if either of you gentlemen would want to continue the discussion.
Yeah, why don't you give us a little heads up on your thoughts about the whole process? It was,
Well, prior to us actually getting to this point, what we've done in the past had worked pretty good so far, unless we get inundated over it. I mean, they'll still make the first presentation to me. I'll bring it forward, and then I'll go over and give it to Lee, and he'll go through it. We have this new process. I'm sorry to say that I hadn't had much time to study that yet myself. Unless we run into some issues with it down the road a ways, I think we can handle it at this end for a while.
Ken, a couple things that came up when we talked about this before. The main concerns, one's volume, and that's pretty easy to control. But this document, I guess I question, should it define or specify when they have to end, or do you want to leave that ambiguous as we go for each one? I thought it says it has blanks for it, but it doesn't specifically say it has to end by a time.
It does say end by 1 a.m.
Yeah, the next sentence thereafter, Councilman.
That says serve beverages.
Number 2.
In no event shall any live performance continue or alcoholic
does say that,
beverages be
okay.
served. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
We can stick with one.
Have we had,
Just one question.
I'm sorry.
Are we going to specify how many will allow not to exceed number per year? I know we talked about that a little bit too, and that seems like we maybe should specify that.
I think that's going to be a thing we're just going to have to float with for a little bit. We'll have to see. I mean, Shooters so far is the one that's come before us, but we have had some interest from Sparky's, and they're thinking about teaming up with Duffy's property across the street. If it gets to be an issue that this is becoming so much, we might have to revisit that, but I think right now it's not gotten to that point, so I hate to just start a bunch of rules that don't want to really need yet.
I would agree with that.
and there's been some real discussion of where the bandstand can be, so the noise doesn't travel all the way north or south, maybe bounce it off some of the buildings that are right there off the Shooters building, off those buildings right in the parking lot there.
Correct.
I think there's things that can be done that would work very well.
Yep.
If we just get the wind to blow.
Well, one of the good things is that we are getting people downtown, and that's been a real emphasis of, I know the Uptown Board, the Renewal Board has been to get reasons to have people up there. And now we just, if we can get this, kind of have it under control a little bit, but it sure is encouraging to know that people want to put things downtown. So I like to see it, and I don't know what the numbers should be, how many, but it's a reason to go downtown on a Friday or a Saturday night. So, and I think the people that are doing these want them under control too. They want to be able to keep having them. So,
And there is
I
some
think we're in the
people
right
from,
direction.
there is some people from the public here tonight that in the audience that have participated in these. I think they did a pretty good job of trying to keep them under control. I mean, noise is noise. The amazing thing is we get the majority of our noise complaints from halfway across town, but the people that live downtown aren't the ones that are complaining, so.
A couple things on it. I would feel much better agreeing with this, because quite honestly, without pretty specific terms of what we all have agreed to in regards to time is when it ends and the number of these that we have, we're going to be the ones getting the phone calls. And I'd rather agree to the terms that we all clearly understand and work to, and then I'm good with this administratively. Without that, I can't support it.
So what are you missing?
What terms are you missing?
We're talking about the terms of the number.
But we have a time at 1 o'clock.
We don't have a number
Oh,
of
yeah.
these events, Mayor, that are, and we had lengthy discussion about this last
We
time. We
did.
were in disagreement with it. So without that, I personally am not supporting it.
Okay, and that's
Okay.
fine.
The other issue is-
let me just clarify. Hang on to your issue. I just want to make sure that, I mean, we're sitting here and we're going to have 3 per bar or something like that, or only 3 in town or something. That's a tough one to decide on. So I just want to throw my opinion out for you also.
They're going to be making that decision on how many we're going to have then, right?
That is
and not us, when we're the ones that are going to get the phone calls, other than the police probably. So I'm just telling you where my position is at it.
We'll get calls.
The second one is we have some of these places that have had violations in the alcohol checks. And I question whether they should be eligible to do this when they have had a failure with the alcohol check. I think there should be some kind of or some limit in there as to after a failed alcohol check, how long they can go without it. This is a privilege, and they violated the original privilege, which is the requirement. So to me, there should be some language in there that deals with the alcohol check violations.
I would add, Councilman, that the way that the resolution reads right now is that the chief of police and the city building official have the discretion whether or not to enter into an agreement, as well as should there be any development in terms of licensing, say they sell underage or what have you, between the time at which this agreement is entered into and they hold the event, the license or the permit, if you will, to hold the event can be revoked. And in fact, the language in here says it can be revoked at any time for any reason and without notice.
So in all reality, it could be revoked right in the middle of that evening.
Well, and this isn't really set in stone either, you know, if down the road it's not working out, if we're getting a lot of complaints and there's a lot of issues, we can go back to where we're at now if need be.
If you point it towards my house, nobody complains down there. Yeah. That's right.
Can I guess I've got a question. Are we giving, the way it's been presented, I'm assuming you guys are comfortable with this? I mean, are we giving you enough guidance? Are you comfortable with what you're taking upon yourself here? I mean, I share some of the same concern that Mike expressed. I guess I'd like to get your take, whether or not you guys are comfortable doing this.
I'll tell you from my take, Glenn. We have talked about this quite a few different times at our meetings with the mayor and other staff from the city. And it's always, a lot of these ideas presented here, Justin came up and put in here because there were things that came out of that meeting. I'm pretty comfortable with most of the stuff in here. I don't know that I want to be the sole one to decide if we're going to have these dances or not. I'm sure going to be looking towards the mayor and the rest of you for some guidance along the way. There are some bars in town that if they apply, I'm probably going to be opposed to it because of some violations they've had or some cooperation we've gotten with them in the past. Yeah, that's kind of where I sit.
And I don't think you guys are opposed to bringing it in front of the council. If you have questions, you say, you know, I don't really know if we should do this or not, and maybe you want to bring it in front of the body and say,
do that.
I think
we
you
have
could
no
do
problem
that.
with that. I mean, it's everything. All these things are kind of living and growing things. You're just going to throw it out there and work with it a little bit and see how it turns out.
My understanding is that more than likely this will be discussed at the Tuesday morning meeting anyhow when somebody applies for a dance.
I'll certainly bring it up.
There will be 10 of us there that are looking at this at one particular time. And if there's numerous questions, I think it will come in front of this body.
And I think you're closer to, I mean, I wouldn't have as much inside information on who violated what as you would, you know, and so I would trust to your judgment, you know, whether or not this is something good or not to pursue. So I'm comfortable with the fact that, you know, given your positions and the fact that you are going to discuss it with other people, you know, as long as you're comfortable at that level, I think I am,
Right.
you know.
And I know at one of our meetings we talked about an end time, and I know Don alluded to that. It does say it shall go no later than 1. I know there was some discussion about 12:30. We discussed that with shooters, and they didn't think that was going to work for them. And they're here if you wanted to hear it from them. But that's what they told us. So that's why the 1 o'clock was written in here. If we try to do it any sooner, that'll be up to if they want to hold the event, then I guess at that point.
Any other questions from these guys? Hearing none, I am going to, at this time, look for council action. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Number 11, authorization for the mayor to sign a joint powers maintenance and encroachment agreement between the Department of Transportation, City of Watertown for the Highway 81 and 20th Avenue South Roundabout project. And Shane, if you want, Well, maybe I'll get a motion in a second for discussion, and then Shane, I'll have you go on that. Motion by John, second by Dan. Shane, you want to go through this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a fairly standard agreement. The city has entered these with the DOT on previous projects within the city limits. Most recently, we did one of these for the Highway 81 reconstruction project from 3rd Avenue to 18th Avenue North. This particular project is the infamous roundabout intended for construction at the intersection of Highway 81 and 20th Avenue South. The anticipated construction schedule is that it would be under construction in 2018. With that said, the DOT and the city, which we also have a portion of the project to realign some of our sanitary sewer within the intersection to accommodate the new pavement footprint. Our portion of the project is about $200,000 estimated cost, and we are planning to put our plans within their project and have it let at the same time. So with that, the state has offered us this maintenance and encroachment agreement between the DOT and the city of Watertown to include all the city work and their own in that project. And we need to have authorization for the mayor to sign this agreement if we're going to proceed.
Okay, and I just wanted to comment about this, because Shane, we are bringing this forward. There are some folks out there, some businesses that have sent in a request. Don, you've probably got a couple of letters, I would imagine. They asked me where to send them. I said, send them to Don. So, that are not very happy about doing a roundabout down there. This is a DOT decision that needs to be made, but there are things that, like you say, we have to get done. So have you got any questions for Shane on this?
Mayor, describe what has transpired down there to appease some of those people and the issue down there that we all had concerns with, that apparently that has lessened. And my understanding is it's lessened greatly, at least in listening to people. And if that is the case, so if you would describe that, and then secondarily, if that is the case, why would we go to the trouble of reconstructing this whole thing and spending $200,000 of the city's money if the solution that's there is effective?
And the solution, and Don, you may want to help me out on this, the solution that there is a temporary solution. They're still going to put in some rumble strips on the south side and not the north side, because I believe the community down there asked that the rumble strips not be in there. The state felt as though the rumble strips should be there just for safety reasons. They don't like the noise that they produce. It has, in fact, lessened and Chief, you may step in here too, there hasn't been any accidents down there since this has happened. There's some confusion when people get there, and there's cars kind of on both sides and on the east and west. There is confusion of who gets to go first and who gets to go second. So that has been a bit of an issue, but these are temporary that they put in. So they're not a permanent fix, and if they were to put in temporary, it would be quite a project in itself.
Okay, I'll add to that discussion, Councilman. The DOT is in the driver's seat with regard to the reconstruction of this intersection, and if the project is going to go forward, the city and other utilities related to that intersection have been instructed to accommodate the new construction and the footprint. So that obligates the city to commit to its portion of that process, and our portion is estimated at $200,000. But I wanted to be clear that the DOT is the ones that's determining whether this project is going to go forward or not, and the city, frankly, is along for the ride.
Do you have a picture of what that roundabout on your computer? Could you bring it up and show us?
Mayor, while he's doing that, if we approve this, which we likely will, would the process of the petitions and the discussions still be allowed to go forward with the state, so they could make a change of direction on it?
Oh,
and this would
absolutely.
have no bearing on that?
This has no bearing on
Okay.
it. If the state decides that they do not want to move forward with this, which would be unusual for them to back out of a plan that they have structured over a 5-year time. Yeah, it could still be stopped. Yeah. Would you agree with that assessment, Don, that, they put it in a 5-year plan?
I don't disagree with what you said. I would just add to it that the reason why they're going to go forward with that solution is that's what they deem to be the safest, most efficient route there. This project has been on the drawing board for quite some time. I'm maybe just a little surprised that there's some opposition that comes up this late in the game. But I don't want to say the train's left the station, but close.
Can you put my screen up?
Yeah, it's up there now.
This is a mock-up of the footprint of the project. You can see that it does twist some of these entrances into the roundabout, and of course that's to help maintain speed and get direction so that you start to curve in the right direction of going around. It is a single lane roundabout with a interior area for the trailers of the semis to encroach up on towards the center. So single lane is really important. That was a big design element that we discussed with the state at length, because we didn't want people maneuvering through this side by side. That was not going to be a safe and comfortable fit for the community. So this footprint, this isn't probably the final footprint, but this was a very good representative of what's intended to be out there.
If I could just add a couple points. Statistically speaking, a single lane roundabout is the safest intersection they have. Point number 2, when the DOT presented this to the City of Watertown at the Event Center about 2 years ago, there was a lot of concerns about some of the trucking folks, specifically those with a pup or a second trailer on the back end. Is that going to be able to fit? They actually sketch this out, and I think if you go online, you can see a video where they actually sketched this out and drove those trucks through them. And naturally, you got to slow down a little bit to do that, but that was part of the reason. So those 2 points, I think, need to be refreshed.
Yep, and another point to that, they've enhanced this roundabout. If you look at this right-hand turn movement coming from the south to the east and coming from the north to the east and all that, they've actually made those almost into what we could call a free right turn, where you just have to slow down enough to negotiate the curve, and you're right on your way going, on the side leg without even having to enter the roundabout proper. So they've done a very good job in designing this, that only those people that have to go completely around to the left have to engage the circle. Otherwise, you're pretty much got a pretty good pattern of traffic through this intersection.
Yeah, so a truck, in reality, if it's coming out of Glacial Lakes, would really just take that easy right-hand turn to go south. If they were going to go north, they would have they'd have to get into the roundabout. And if they had to go east, they would get just a partial. So it really shouldn't be.
Right, they'd only enter the roundabout to go east or north.
Right. I would also, I agree with what you said, but I hope this would encourage more people to use the bypass too by having this here, because you don't have to stop when you go through.
Shane, wasn't it originally a 2-lane?
I can't speak to
I
that.
think that's what was communicated way back when, and I know there was a lot of concerns about that. So
since I've been involved with it, it's been a single lane.
Yep.
Any other questions on it? Hearing none, I think I have a motion, don't I, Shel? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for putting that up there, Shane. I think that was good visual. Number 12, authorization for the mayor to sign a professional service agreement with Houston Engineering Incorporated for the landfill stormwater plan update project in the amount of $47,400. This time I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Beth, second by Bill. And Shane, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. This is essentially phase 3 of our current landfill projects. Is my screen up again? Okay, so to the far northeast of the landfill site, this is our landfill site. We own all of this property in that square. Cell 6 is the most recent cell that's being constructed out there. That was scheduled to be finished this summer. It was originally scheduled to be done last fall. It had complications and did not get done. Right next to it was Cell 5, and that was done 2 years previous. So this is Phase 3, and Phase 3 is going to work on the stormwater impacts along the north boundary, along the east, and where we've taken water out of these borrow areas, and we're going to redo the storm sewer system throughout the entire facility. And this engineering agreement that we're asking you to give the mayor authorization to sign is to initiate that Phase 3 project. And it's required. We've done enough changes out there that the existing storm sewer system and plan is no longer up to date. So,
any questions for Shane on this? Hearing none, then I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 13, authorization for the mayor to sign a professional service agreement with Banner Associates Incorporated for the Willow Creek Floodplain Map Update Project in the amount of $16,180. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by, who was it down there? Randy, second by Don. All right, Shane.
I'm still on? Good, thank you. Excellent. Banner and Associates was originally hired to do a stormwater drainage study for Willow Creek as it enters through the eastern portion of the community and define how the flood impacts would be during a certain storm event. After that original study was done, the city adopted that into an ordinance, and so we have the Willow Creek floodplain study. Since the initiation of that study, there was a few anomalies with the datum, which means elevation data that the original study was done on. So since then, the state has come up with a evaluation of elevations called LIDAR, and that's driven by technology. It's a long technical term, but they fly the entire state, they receive data back and reestablish what elevations are out there. So this project was to grab onto that LIDAR data that's available to the city now and update the original Willow Creek study so we can evaluate where there's maybe some discrepancies or anomalies in the original report and correct those. An additional impact was that Willow Creek drainage study had significant impacts down here to the new softball complex and the proposed ice sheet facility. So I apologize, I can't get my normal GIS to work, but the Willow Creek floodplain spills out about where my hand is next to the Anza complex and spills out into this area right here. What we hope to do is this updated LIDAR data will either indicate whether that is accurate or not. If it's not accurate, we'll amend the map to take that area out of the Willow Creek floodplain area. Secondary, if we do find that it is in there, it appears based on the original study that we could do some minor work along this portion of Willow Creek and thus remove the iceplex and the softball field from the Willow Creek floodplain impacts. So it's a two-pronged approach. We're going to ask, and with that, we've identified there were several tasks given in the report by Banner, but we're only asking that we approach task 1 and optional task 6 with this agreement. So that's why I'm asking for permission for the mayor to enter into the agreement to get this work done. Let's make sure that we're accurately depicting the floodplain and its impacts to the Willow Creek area.
And in this particular study, if it does come in favorable for the city, could literally free up hundreds of thousands of dollars for us on this facility.
Potentially, yes.
That was my question, Mayor, is what's the end result if we're successful?
If we're
You know?
successful, what we've got right now, the way that the property sits, we need to put in 7 feet of fill underneath the ice facility. That's a lot of fill. And so we're hoping that we can either remove it down a foot or 2 foot, whatever it might be.
Okay.
It's substantial.
Okay, and I want to be clear, because that in and of itself isn't going to be what I would consider make this report being success or a failure. Because even if we fail to achieve that goal of not having to put the extra fill in the Iceplex, what it will do is it will solidify this Willow Creek study so that we can more accurately depict the impacts to those people that want to develop all the way through the district, all the way from the Big Sioux River up through the I-29 corridor. So this isn't just a singular thing for the city and the Iceplex. It also impacts the whole Willow Creek area in town. And so there is a benefit even if we can't assist our own project.
Right, and I just want to, can you zoom in on the Stromseth property also? Can you zoom in on that just a little bit? All that property there, just for your information, has recently been sold. That's been sold to an earth moving company that has some grand plans for us on that area, which will be coming forward in just a short time. So it's exciting to see that happen. All right, so at this time, if there's no more questions, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 14, consideration amendment number 1 to the professional service agreement with HR Green Incorporated for the WWTF laboratory, that's wastewater treatment facility, laboratory replacement project, increasing the contract amount by $4,000. Excuse me. At this time, I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Beth. Any questions on this? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 15, consideration of bids received for the 2017 alley and parking lot improvement project. At this time, I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Don, second by Dan. And then, Neil, this is what you've been waiting for all this time. You've been hanging out. You've been really patient with us. And good, too. You haven't even been noisy over there. Shane, you want to give us a little upfront information on this? We did talk about it on the work session, but we'll go through it again.
Okay, summary, March 9th, we took bids on a multiple-pronged project. One was a alley assessment project. The other portion was the parking lot reconstruction for the Jackson Park boat ramp area. And the third piece of that project was the improvements to the bike trail alongside of the Jackson Park parking lot. The bids did come in above engineers' estimates. The alley assessments would increase roughly by a couple $100 per lot. We did send out letters to the landowners that were a part of that project requesting informational feedback, pro or con to that. We received no information, so we have to make the assumption that they are still on board with the project, as there weren't any active protests lobbied to the city. Now, if there's anybody in the audience, I'd like to hear what they would like to say.
And Neil, do you want to come up and give us any information about it, or is everybody good?
I think everybody is.
Go ahead and come on up to the speaker and tell us who you are. And
my name is Neil Meister, and I live on North Park Street, and have been active in trying to get this going. And but I have visited with the various people ahead of time, and since the letter came out, as many as I could, and everyone seems in favor, and so I think we're good to go.
Yeah, it'll be a great alley afterwards.
I think.
Okay.
The main comment I heard is it's never going to get any cheaper.
That's most likely correct.
So do you want to do this in 3 motions?
I would, yes,
Okay.
I would do
So
that.
the first motion here that we have on the floor will be for bid schedule number 1 on the 2017 alley improvement. Do you need them to amend their motion to include that, or are we good? good to go.
If you just make your motion to award schedule,
Because I have a motion on the floor, I'm just wondering if you need to have it changed.
okay, all right. I guess, let's finish our discussion. Maybe you can just follow your motion to approve. The
Okay.
Jackson Park project.
Let's go ahead and just finish this one up, then we'll go to number 2.
Okay, that's your
All right.
discretion.
So we are voted on these separately.
Yeah, we're going to vote on each one of these separately. So we have motion number 1 on the floor, which is bid schedule number 1.
Correct.
The 2017 alley improvement. And that's for $23,893 is what the bid came in at. So I have a motion on the floor, so I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So then I'm going to go on to number 2, which is I'm going to look for a motion and a second for bid schedule number 2, the Jackson Park parking lot improvements. I'll look for a motion and discussion motion and a second for discussion, I'm sorry. Motion by Mike, second by Brad. There you go, Shane.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As we previously discussed, the Jackson Park parking lot improvements came in over estimate. We have a budget of $75,000 and the bid price came in at $104,643, so approximately $30,000 over our project budget. As we discussed at the work session, our options would be to deny or reject this bid. We could table it and see if there's some way to negotiate the price down by changing some material aspects. I have reached out to the contractor with regard to that discussion and see if there's some potential cost savings to the city, or we can approve it and go forward with accepting these bids as quoted.
So when is their plan, if you were to approve this, when would they hope to get in there?
Well, we would schedule a pre-construction meeting sometime in the next month and determine the schedule at that time. One of the provisions that we've written in there is that the lot be open to the public as much as possible during the 3 holidays. In other words, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. So the work would be done around that schedule.
And what's the odds of them coming back and saying, okay, we're going to use some shingles, or we're going to use this other type of stuff? What's the odds of us getting a reduced price on that?
They've actually presented that as a design option for the city, and they're looking, they're requesting the city if we're interested in accepting recycled asphalt products in our mix design. And the state DOT allows a certain percentage of recycled asphalt products in their mix designs, and many of the larger cities do as well. It is typically does have some cost savings to the city because you're reusing material that you don't have to go out and buy extra virgin materials to build the product with.
Yeah.
So
most of that, you're talking millings, are you not?
Yes, typically it's mostly asphalt millings, and sometimes it involves recycled asphalt shingles. That's kind of not as common around this part of the country as other parts. We are entertaining that discussion with them, and we haven't made a final decision. I think we would allow it in some portions of our contract, but not necessarily universally across the board. But
parking lots would be something that would
Yes,
be probably
yes.
favorable.
So we could accomplish the same thing by approving this and taking a adjustment on the bid.
Okay, so we could do it after the fact. I'd rather have a known commitment for a reduction if that's the case. If you want to rely on just funding the bids as is, that's the initial question.
So we could table this one pending your additional information that would be coming from the
You'd have that by
contractor?
2 weeks, so.
I'm hoping to, yes.
That wouldn't affect their construction dates or?
Not substantially.
Okay.
I
don't
think
look
it should
for
be
it.
tabled personally. I think there's both issues. The next one coming up, I think we should as well, because there's some discussion that we've had that might play into some of the design on this too, we might want to consider too, so.
I think we've talked about using some of those millings for a long time, and I think it's a great idea if we can get that done.
Yeah.
So, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Does that have to be withdrawn, or does it have to be changed?
Withdrawn.
We need a substitute motion if you want to table, and then all discussion will need to end.
Okay. So
I'll make
look
that
for a
substitute motion.
And a second. The motion should be to table, a substitute motion to table this item number 2, bid schedule number 2, the Jackson Park parking lot improvement.
I'll make that motion to table it.
Okay, so I have a motion by Randy and second by Mike. Any other conversations on it? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I will probably look for the same motion on bid schedule 3, Jackson Park Trail improvement, since I doubt if they would want to do that without the other end of it. So I'll entertain a motion to table this also.
So moved.
Motion by Mike to table this item, second by Glenn to table it. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 16, any old business that needs to be discussed?
I have one point. We were, last meeting, we talked about sending out an email to the residents in Ward A about Cherry Creek. Have we communicated with them?
No, actually, I was hoping to have the draft letter. I can't send the email. I don't have enough. The supposition was that there was a lot of email data available. I looked through that, and essentially maybe 5 or 6 emails is all I have. So my intention is to resend a letter updating that, and I was hoping to have that letter in the council's hands tonight to review, but it will go out in the next day or two, and I will copy all of you on that contents of that letter.
You.
Any new business needs to be discussed? Any liaison member reports? There is a need to go into executive session. I don't believe it'll be very long. I do not expect anything to come out of this. Well, there may be a chance something will come out of this, and it is for contract negotiations. So I'll look for a motion, a second, to go into executive session. Motion by John, second by Bruce. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are in executive session.